We on?
So we're right here now outside of the Kirchhoff I don't know what to call this. It's
A cemetery.
It's the Grabstätten Johann Gottlieb Fichte Friedrich Hegel. Like, that's just all it says on the map. But what we did was we looked up the grave site of Hegel. So when we had originally looked this up, I had no idea that Hegel was buried literally right beside Fichte. But it actually makes a lot of sense for reasons that we'll get into that I think will be instructive. So let's check it out. There's basically gonna be two that are close to one another. One of them has a cross and the other one is just a big headstone. Yeah, like not that one, and definitely not this one, but I wanted to see Emile Du Bois. Over there. You saw it, right? You know?
Yeah.
I think we found where Jesus is.
I think probably.
Yeah.
No.
But,
Beautiful cemetery indeed.
And realized that there is another side to the graveyard here. There it is. There it
We
is.
both spotted it. What is the most respectful way to get to it? This way.
Mary Hegel, Sedbon Tuchner. Guessing he had a wife,
Yeah, this looks like they're spouses.
Johanna Marie Fichte. So, So we're gonna come back at 8 a.m. for the video, but since I am all worked up to talk about this right now, I'm gonna talk. You gotta think that the time that they're writing, I'm like looking at that and it's all in Roman numerals and I'm like, math? What is this? But you know, between the mid 1800s to early 1900s. Johann Gottlieb Fichte, born 1762, died 1814. And G.W.F. Hegel, born 1770, died 1831. It was dangerous to be on the side of the bourgeois revolution. The bourgeois revolution is something that we talk about when thinking about John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. The French Revolution and the American Revolution are both two arms of the bourgeois revolution. The French Revolution had a much more radical element or contingency because that was the time when the revolutionaries were becoming aware of a little thing called class, which we can talk a lot more about later. For the time being, it was dangerous to speak out against the kings or princes. It was dangerous to speak out against the old feudal or aristocratic families or regimes. Fichte may have been one of the most strongest advocates of a strong state, but he was also a profound thinker of freedom, and he kind of thought you can have your cake and eat it too. The freedom of the individual being made possible by a strong state. And he is, after all, the thinker of having your cake and eating it too. To put it that way, in terms so crass, that is what his dialectics of thesis, antithesis, synthesis are really about. For him, it is about, you have warring ideas through history, fighting it out, but over time, because they all see some element of the truth, these elements of the truth all add up into new syntheses. Hegel comes along and asserts something different. But as I was saying earlier, the point is that Hegel constantly gets confused as being nothing but a Fichte. So not to put Fichte down, he's an important part of the dialectic and a profound thinker of subjectivity and freedom, as well as the state. But Hegel doesn't take the easy way out of synthesis.
That's actually pretty good. Yeah, it's kind of nice.
All right.
Okay. Dave, where are we right now?
So we're at the gravesite of the burial site of both Fichte and Hegel.
Okay, and tell us, why do you think G.W.F. Hegel is an important thinker in the field of philosophy?
It's such a heavy question for me because I've been wondering the same thing for so long. There's this part of me that just wished for the longest time that I didn't have to bother with Hegel. The thinkers I find most fascinating in the history of philosophy are often ones that are not taken too seriously by the people who dominate the academic scene in the United States today. And that is to say, they are continental thinkers, the thinkers of continental philosophy, which is a problematic and arguable term in the first place. But rolling with it, the basic idea is that after Hegel, there's the people who read Hegel and the people who don't read Hegel. The people who read Hegel and take him seriously, or at least the people who read the people who read Hegel and took him seriously, are generally considered to be in the continental tradition. Now, there are people like Robert Brandom and Pippin in the United States. There are definitely some profound and important Hegelian scholars in the United States, and they are an exception to the general rule of indifference and willful ignorance. But the fact is, Hegel is understood as being just an idealist, not like living just by your ideals, being naive and not having like a sense for what's, brute reality and necessity. That's not. In philosophy, idealism is juxtaposed to materialism. And so they think anyone who says that he is an idealist is basically saying that he thinks that you can understand everything that's important about the world without going out and doing empirical research. You can understand everything that's important about the world through mind alone, really. And that also, we can't really know if anything of the world is real, but it's definitely not as important as the stuff of mind. None of this is fair to Hegel. When I say that he's one of the arguably the most important thinker of the 19th century, we have to think, not only did he profoundly impact and shape those who follow from him, including Karl Marx, Husserl, Heidegger, Derrida, Foucault. I mean, a lot of these people who, so like Foucault, never really rolls with Hegel, but he read him, or at least he sat through lectures about him, and he was profoundly impacted by him. And so even if he's not a Hegelian, he's working in some way, in some kind of negative way perhaps, in a reference to Hegel. And that actually could be a way of characterizing those philosophers in the analytic tradition who don't think they need to read Hegel either. There's a sort of industry arising now of people realizing that Hegel wasn't who he was understood as being, which was this sort of Fichte character. Nothing against Fichte, but there's a lot more going on with Hegel. Now, it's not just his theory, though. It's the fact that he had a mind that tried harder than anyone to understand the whole, to understand the most essential things about oneself and the world. And he's, as a thinker of dialectics of contradiction, not just this idea of thesis, antithesis, synthesis, but instead thinking through tarrying with the negative, through spending time trying to really wrap your head around every side of an argument and understand what's really at stake in a debate on all sides, looking for those aspects of the truth on all sides, but also finding irreconcilable deadlocks and things that you just can't, square, problems that you can't get around. Through doing that, you are able to rise to another level of consciousness. But it's only that rise to that next level only comes through tarrying with the negative. And so that I think is my answer to your first question.
Okay. I'm gonna put this down for a second. Okay. Now, why is Hegel's work important to your own philosophical works and interests?
So I think the main reason he's important to me is because I want to understand Slavoj Žižek.
The 20th century was not Deleuzian but Marxian. The 21st century will be Hegel.
To be perfectly honest, Slavoj Žižek is someone who I, for the longest time, thought was kind of just a joker who talks about movies, who likes to reference Lacan and Hegel. I had no idea that there was some rigorous philosophy going on there. And so, and to be fair, I'd only really read little tiny throwaway books that he rolls out that are basically, him putting his opinion on something. I'd never really spent time struggling with his major works until my friend Michael Downs and some others really started to raise the importance of Hegel for me, saying that no, Slavoj Žižek is really onto something here. Like, Hegel really has been misunderstood, and so often when someone like Derrida or Wittgenstein thinks he's saying something profound that nobody else has ever said, they're repeating Hegel. And they usually do it while critiquing Hegel. So Derrida is a perfect example of that. He thinks that Hegel is this thinker of totality. You can understand the whole, and by understanding the whole, like, you don't have to get out of your chair and actually go outside and talk to people or do science or whatever. He thinks that Hegel is this thinker of grand totalities, that you can just understand everything, and that everything is reducible to a system. The thing is that the kind of system that he develops is not a closed one. It is an open one that has irreconcilable difference cooked into it, which is very Derridian. But the thing is Derrida comes way after Hegel. And so what Derrida is arguing against is a straw man. And Slavoj Žižek makes that case in Foreword, They Know Not What They Do. And so it's reading Sublime Object of Ideology and reading For They Know Not What They Do that makes me realize that this is one of the greatest minds. He's the Aristotle of modernity. And to say that is to say that he really tried to understand every relevant field in science of his day as a philosopher, not just as a sophist's approach is to understand, oh, these are all the things you need to know about all these different branches of knowledge. And that's admirable, to be able to say all the things that there are to know about every branch of, or at least the most important things that there are to know about every branch of science or in every field of knowledge. But it's another thing altogether to do so as a philosopher, to try to understand all those fields and to say, okay, but what unites them and what can't unite them, and what's our place in all of that? That's the philosophical task. And few philosophers have ever really risen to the challenge in the way that Aristotle or Hegel have, or did. So, I mean, it really is like a profound experience to be on this soil of this continent, in front of this grave, after having wrestled with this great mind for all these years. He's not just this bourgeois revolutionary figure. He's not just a know-it-all. And he's not just an obscurantist. He is one of the most important and greatest minds in the history of the world.
Wow. When you put it that way, it makes it seem like everyone should read him. So tell me, Dave. Yeah, that's a good spot for it.
I'm all getting up here. It's like, ooh, we're beside the ghost of Hegel is coming. It's like a.
If someone was interested in reading Hegel, using some of Hegel's ideas for their own works to grow themselves, to, just explore, where would you personally recommend that this person starts? What work, what text, what essay, what book? Where should they start, and how should they start?
That is such a good question. And my answer is going to be very much my own answer.
Yes.
Right? YouTube has lectures by great professors who take their time and go into Hegel in all kinds of ways. So it really doesn't hurt to get started that way. It doesn't hurt to listen to podcasts. The Why Theory podcast is a fantastic podcast by Todd McGowan and Ryan Engley. Todd McGowan has a whole YouTube channel where he talks about Lacan and Hegel and Žižek. It really is probably good to go to sources like that when you don't have the energy or time to really confront what seems like the densest, most impenetrable, most difficult texts ever written. Now, if you have the energy or the time to even spend 20 minutes to an hour and a half really wrestling with something that isn't going to make sense at first, I would recommend the preface to the Phenomenology of Spirit, which is also translated as the Phenomenology of Mind, because the word being translated is Geist, which does not mean what American English would mean by the word spirit or mind. It's something that, because mind is reducible to individuals, and spirit is usually reducible to anything that can't be talked about scientifically is kind of considered the realm of spirituality or religion. The way that the Germans at the time that Hegel was alive were thinking of this word Geist is also a lot more caught up in the idea of like the spirit of the times, like a zeitgeist. The idea is that spirit is kind of almost synonymous with the word culture, that it's something between people, not just from inside of a person, but it's also between people. And what holds those people together is shared knowledge. And so that's not something that can be summarized, that this idea of spirit or this kind of understanding of humanity is not something that can be summarized, put on a PowerPoint, put in a textbook, memorized, regurgitated, and then understood. Instead, it's a process that one must struggle through, and it really is a struggle. And so the preface to the Phenomenology of Spirit is where Hegel makes the argument, and it really is so hard to read the first time, but later when you come back to it and try again, as you keep trying, it becomes more and more clear what he's saying. And then you can take a break and watch a YouTube video or listen to a podcast while at work or whatever. And it's something that you should always just kind of come back to, that you should kind of plan on living with. Make it a life goal to understand Hegel, but specifically that preface. Just get started with that. You could spend the rest of your life just with the preface. I'm not saying don't read the rest of the Phenomenology of Spirit or his more formidable work, The Logic of Science. Or is it The Science of Logic? Yeah, it's The Science of Logic. He also has an encyclopedia on the science, and he has his lectures on the history of philosophy, and he has lectures on the philosophy of history. And then he's got, his philosophy of right, which gets into his political philosophy, and he's got all these other things. But to really get at him saying, this is how I understand philosophy. This is why it can't be summarized. This is why it's a process that every individual, if they really want to pull their intellectual selves up by their bootstraps, so to speak, you actually can't just do that taking notes from professors, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube. You actually have to do it yourself. There are problems that you just have to work through on every side. And the Phenomenology Spirit is just one way of seeing someone do that, because that's what he's doing, is he's working his thoughts out. And he's saying, here you go. So this is the problematic that Fichte is dealing with. We understand it. It's an irresolvable contradiction, but by understanding it, we realize there's another level. And then he'll take you to that next level, and then you'll think through the problems of that, and then he'll say, okay, now it's the next level. And there's just level after level after level of starting with like really intuitive kinds of problems, like this problem. I'm going to make this quick. But he talks about the problem of, if you want to just say, cut the abstract stuff out, let's talk about here and now. Let's talk about what's right in front of us. He says, you actually have no idea how abstract that is. The word here and the word now, these are words that only make sense in reference to an I. And an I only makes reference to a self. To understand what here and now even means presupposes you already know what an I or a self is. So here's a problem. Now we have to go from that problem to another problem. Because Fichte thought just starting with the subject, starting with the I, you have access to absolute certainty, kind of like Descartes thought. But he thought you could build a whole system from that. Hegel goes, it's a system that's going to keep falling apart. But if we can follow through those implosions, those problems, those contradictions, tarry with the negative, then we'll rise to another level. And so starting with the preface and banging your head against the wall, trying to understand one of the most difficult minds in the history of philosophy, is something that will gradually level you up. But it's going to level you up a lot faster. It's going to level you up so much faster than if you try to take little baby steps. Mm-hmm. This is why I said it is my approach. My approach is to dive in the deep end and spend a lot of time being overwhelmed. Like being here, hearing German everywhere we go, hearing Polish, hearing Finnish, hearing French. We're hearing all these languages. Are we sitting in a classroom taking the basic baby steps? Or are we just saturated and overwhelmed and thinking, oh, I don't know what any of this means, but you're getting a sense for it. You're getting a feel for it. You're kind of getting, and it's planting in your heart these deep questions that are going to live in your unconscious. And then when you try to take the baby steps in that classroom, it will speed things up and you'll find traction a lot faster, because it's not going to be just abstract, because it will be relevant to your here and now. So start with Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit. Definitely check out McGowan and all of these other wonderful lecturers who are on YouTube. Links down below, obviously. But whenever you have the time and energy to actually bang your head against the wall of one of the most impenetrable texts, or go to YouTube, always go to the text and then do YouTube when you can't do the text, because there is no comparison to actually doing philosophy. And philosophy is always reading, writing, talking in that order. Never in the other order. And it's always then rinse and repeat over the years. And then eventually you'll be like my friend Bert. You'll look back and you'll go, I had no idea I was capable of this. I had no idea what I was capable of until I actually tried. And it was starting with the phenomenology of spirit and saying, I might not be able to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Or as my friend Kenneth says, he says, you know, I might have only understood 10%, but it's my 10%.
Quick little PSA about the Theory Underground 2024 European book tour. So we were on tour in September 2023 to promote Underground Theory and my book Timenergy. Well, now we're meeting up with some collaborators from Underground Theory in London, Berlin, Vienna, Athens, Krakow. And that's just the places where we know that we actually have venues, or at least we're pretty sure we have venues. Not everything is really nailed down just yet. It's coming together, and that's what I need you for. We'll be there in May, maybe the tail end of April, but basically the month of May is when we'll be in Europe. If you think that we would be a good fit in your city, then let us know. If you've got a group, or if you've got institutional funding, or if you've got some other kind of funding, if you know that you would be able to bring us and kind of put on a good event, then we want to talk. We want to see if that might work, because, you know, plans come together pretty fast here at Theory Underground, but time is moving quickly, and we need to be buying plane tickets ahead of time to save money. So really, I would say that the deadline is New Year's. The deadline is New Year's. That's the plan. New Year's. Freaking New Year's. Get it in by 2024. I need to know. Now, you don't have to know for sure about, like, say, institutional funding or anything, but if you know for sure that you want to bring us, if you know that you want to host us, if you can volunteer, if you have ideas about venues and stuff, the application deadline is New Year's. Don't do it after that. So pretty much right now, I'm trying to put out all of the Graveside tour stuff that I did in Europe last year within the next month, as a sort of Christmas present for everybody, and also as a way of promoting the fact that we are coming on book tour. If you think that we would be a good fit for you, for your group, for your institution, for your whatever it is that you got going on, whether it's at a university, a library, a community center, or a pub, whatever it is, let us know, and we'll see about coming. So just fill out this form here. It's a link in the description. It's the Theory Underground US Tour volunteer, host, or guide questions. Volunteers, hosts, and guides are 3 different roles. And ultimately, if you have any event organizing abilities, or if you have a venue, then we really need to get talking ASAP. Thank you.
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, where workers with earbuds can find genuine liberation from necessity.
Research at Theory Underground focuses on what is most important for understanding our current situation: theory of the subject, capital, time-energy theory, critical media theory, CMT, and the most essential critiques necessary for understanding why the theory, ideology, and common sense of influencers left to right misses the mark.
Theory Underground is a publishing house, as well as lecture course and social media platform.
You've been reading Underground Theory.
Yes.
And
amazing book. I'm a publisher and an editor. I run and review books. Literally, it's my living. This is the best edited collection I've ever read.
Jesus Christ.
Seriously.
This is a little experiment in what I, David McKerracher, can pull off without relying on the academy or the algorithmic dictates of the attention economy. I believe that I am, like so many others, pioneering a future in which educators can form learning webs that will make learning as a way of life enjoyable and emancipatory. However, before these tools become accessible, they have to be experimented with. That's why I built my own website and app using nothing more than my own saved wages, 5 patrons, and some small classes of students over the last year. Of course, I also have had my wife Anne's moral support and help with accounting so that I don't get in trouble with the IRS or whatever. In less than a year, Theory Underground has already put out 8 courses, 2 books. One, my book, Timenergy, and the other, Underground Theory, which has over 30 contributors, including works written by students at Theory Underground, some of my fellow travelers, and colleagues in the broader universe of underground theory. Beyond the books and courses, though, you will also find interviews, reading exegetical reaction sessions, and live weekly events for working-class autodidacts, independent researchers, and renegade academics. These include a variety of clubs and cohorts that meet on a weekly or monthly basis. If you want to get involved, there are 4 main subscription levels.
Think of it like a gym membership, but for your mind.
The point is to make learning, practice, and theoretical comprehension a way of life. If I can triple my subscribers in the next 2 months, I can quit my gig at Amazon and focus on this work full time. All I need is a few more people at each of the levels, or a couple big-time patrons who just want to see it happen. Right now I am doing a patron and site subscriber drive, so excuse the commercial. But if you end up really liking what goes on at this channel, consider signing up soon. I hope that you either will or have enjoyed the program, and also make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and leave this playing in the background all the time while you're doing other things.
Playing long-form Theory Underground content in the background while you do things has, in the near future, been scientifically proven to emancipate minds from the functional illiteracy imposed on workers by the structural stultification of time energy. This is achieved by reterritorializing circumspective concern.
Also, to some degree, it is for the algorithm.